As of 2025, there's only 8 players who have led the league in assists per game more than 3 times. Unsurprisingly, you've got John Stockton at the top, a 9-time league leader. Then some more recent guys, like Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Chris Paul, each leading the league 5 times. Magic led the league 4 times, but that number might be higher if not for his early retirement. So those 8 players read as a who's who of NBA point guards, except for the other 4-time league leader, Kevin Porter. Throughout the 1970s, Porter dazzled fans, leading the fast break with style and throwing some of the flashiest passes the league had ever seen.
To Kevin Porter. Porter's got so many moves, sometimes I don't think he knows what he's going to do.
He's got 10 assists already. He's averaging 10 a game. He might get 17 or 20 tonight.
And they were on target. During the decade, Porter led the league in assists 3 times and added his 4th assist title in the 80s. Not even 6 feet tall, Porter's stutter step was unguardable. His quickness was his greatest weapon.
Kevin Porter again, and that's what he'll do is penetrate.
And that's his greatest asset is he can penetrate.
And he was his own worst enemy. As scrappy as they come, and never one to back down, chronic foul trouble plagued Porter on the court. And off the court, he was no stranger to conflict.
Now in the game, Kevin Porter. He has been Mr. Controversy #1.
But Kevin Porter was a record-setting dime dropper who has become a virtual unknown in modern NBA circles. So it begs the question, who really was Kevin Porter? Let's jog your memory. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, Kevin Porter spent his teen years suiting up for DuSable High. A great guard for the Panthers, Porter was looked at as the quickest player on the team by head coach Jim Brown, helping DuSable to a central title as a junior. Then as a senior, Porter really became a star, his speed continuing to act as his greatest weapon. To make up for his lack of height, he led the team to a public league holiday tournament championship and was even named a prep all-star. High school was over, but not his hoop dreams. The man who many publications referred to as Little Kevin Porter would take a scholarship to play for St. Francis. It was the late 60s, and freshmen still weren't permitted to play varsity. Yet because St. Francis was a small school, they were exempt from that rule. And head coach John Clark knew that his little guard was ready for the big time. Some of their opponents didn't agree with that decision, maybe out of fear. After all, Porter was dominating the Frosh teams, so why not give him some real competition? No one would be keeping Porter off the court as a sophomore. One of the few Frankies who started consistently, Porter had few weaknesses: scoring, passing, defense. He could do it all. Even starting to hear his name mentioned alongside recent St. Francis graduate and future NBA All-Star Norm Van Leer. Porter had averaged 33 points as a freshman, yet even against much tougher competition this year, he still put up about 23 a game, even being named to the Division I All-East team. The 1971 Frankies would go as far as Porter would take them. In an offense that revolved around the maybe 6-foot guard, Porter was great, routinely leading the team in scoring, and often being the reason they won games. Yet for St. Francis, the wins came as often as the losses. They weren't a powerhouse program, but they had one of the nation's best-kept secrets. Porter averaged at least 23 points for the 2nd straight year and was named 3rd team All-State. Porter had one more year to make his mark and picked up right where he left off. A preseason All-American, Porter's quickness remained his calling card, and his great shooting kept him among the nation's top scorers. His biggest weakness, likely his discipline, with foul trouble being one of the few things that could slow down Kevin Porter. The senior would do everything he could, but it would be another mediocre season for the Frankies, highlighted by the All-State Porter averaging nearly 25 points a game and leaving St. Francis with the 2nd most points in program history. And at this point, you might be wondering, how could someone as good as Porter end up at such a small school? Well, as it turns out, that's what he preferred. He probably could have gone to a bigger program, but that was exactly the problem. It would be too big. So Porter went to Loretto, Pennsylvania, and became one of the best scorers in college basketball. And that wasn't even his best attribute. Back then, assists weren't tracked the same way points were. Porter was a great scorer, but he was a playmaker first, reportedly averaging a legitimate 12 assists during his senior season. And while he seemed to fly under the radar, he was not unknown among NBA circles. The pro game wasn't something he was banking on, but he would at least give it a shot. So he wasn't a top pick, but at a time when the NBA draft had 18 rounds, being selected in the 3rd round is pretty good. Porter was heading to the Baltimore Bullets, who were led by Gene Shue, a coach who had nothing but great things to say about his new point guard, yet not his new starter, as Porter was joining arguably the best starting five in the NBA. There was guard Phil Chenier and forward Mike Reardon, star center Wes Unseld, and of course the Big E, Elvin Hayes, who the Bullets acquired about 2 months after drafting Porter. And then there was the man Porter was set to back up, all-star point guard Archie Clark. But still, the pint-sized Porter would impress as the season neared. Then with Clark staging a contract holdout, Porter would be on the court more than expected, getting big minutes over the first half of the year, and even starting a few games. But after Clark returned in mid-January, Porter spent a lot more time on the bench, yet still contributed, as his new team racked up 52 wins and earned a postseason berth, kicking off with a semifinals matchup against New York. Porter was used sparingly in this series, seeing his most action in a Game 2 blowout loss, and overall appearing in 4 games in a limited capacity, as Baltimore would fall to the eventual NBA champion Knicks in 5, and Porter's rookie year ended with averages of about 6.5 points, 1 rebound, and 3.5 assists per game. Porter may not have had the greatest rookie season, yet fans knew who he was. The numbers hadn't been big, but when Kevin Porter was on the court, he was going to make things happen in an exciting way. Many left wondering if even he knew what he'd do next. As a rookie, he played out of necessity. In year 2, he played because he belonged. The Baltimore Bullets were now the Capital Bullets. No longer coached by Shue, the Bullets' head man was now Casey Jones. And after Porter would explain that Shue's belief in him seemed to diminish as last season went on, Jones appeared to have a lot more faith in the flashy guard, naming Porter a starter after he dropped 22 in the season opener, with Porter again filling in for Clark, who missed the first month and a half of the year, this time recovering from shoulder surgery. You never knew when Porter could take over on either the offensive or defensive end. He was doing a lot of things right, except for staying out of foul trouble, leading to Jones benching the guard in early December. But by late January, he was back in the starting lineup. The fouls were still a problem, but he was putting up about 17 points and 7 assists on 50% shooting over his final 32 games. And with the Bullets winning 20 of those games, Porter had supplanted Clark as the team's floor general, and the Bullets were looking strong as the playoffs neared, as they were given another opportunity to knock off New York in this year's semifinals. Porter was playing well over the first half of the series, averaging over 16 points and nearly 6 assists, while even dropping at least 20 in games 3 and 4, as the series was tied after 4. But fouls continue to be a big issue, and beginning in game 5, Porter's play fell off a cliff, scoring a combined 9 points on 25% shooting. Yet he wasn't completely ineffective. As Walt Frazier would say, Porter really knew how to get under your skin. But in the end, the Knicks would outlast the Bullets in Game 7, with Porter's overall season seeing him average about 14 points, 6 assists, and a steal per game. The 75 season would roll out the more familiar Washington Bullets. Same team, different name. Well, almost the same team. The Bullets had traded Clark to the Sonics over the summer. They were now ready to commit to Porter, the third-year guard about to show that he really was a playmaker first. Now a day 1 starter, Porter kicked off the season with a 16-point, 15-assist double-double. In fact, Porter spent the whole season getting the ball to one of his many high-scoring teammates. And with Wes Unseld throwing perfect outlet passes, the fast break was one of Porter's biggest weapons. His season-opening double-double was one of 25 on the year, with Porter dishing at least 10 assists in 29 games. He dished a then-career-high 21 dimes in a March 2nd win over the Lakers, then surpassed it the following game with 22 in a win over Atlanta. There was no one in the NBA who dropped more dimes than Kevin Porter, leading the league with 8 assists per game. He seemed to have the game figured out. The only thing left was his temper, something that had developed while growing up on 47th Street, once described as the meanest street in Chicago. As a youth, it was necessary and a way to survive. But now in the NBA, it was the main reason why Porter was averaging 4 fouls a night, with many of those being technicals. And even he knew it was a problem, not just on the court, but also in the negotiation room. So if he could get that under control, the sky was the limit. The Bullets had a lot of guys who wanted the ball in their hands, and Porter's passing kept them all happy, with Elvin Hayes even calling him the key to the team. And winning makes everything better, something Washington was doing a lot of, flying out of the gate with 7 straight wins and never really looking back, competing for the best record in the league all year, ultimately finishing tied with Boston in the East with a league-high 60 wins. They wouldn't have to get through New York again, but drawing league MVP Bob McAdoo and the Buffalo Braves would prove to be no easy task. Porter would be one of the best players in the series, doing what he did best, scoring well and passing even better. After a Game 1 loss, he put up 18 points and 10 assists in Game 2, then 19 points and 13 dimes in Game 3 to give the Bullets a 2-1 lead. His numbers dropped over the next 3 as the Bullets put the ball in the hands of Elvin early and often. But after playing his worst game and fouling out in a Game 6 loss, the series went to a deciding Game 7. And in that game, Porter went for a postseason career-high 24 points, along with 8 assists. The Bullets finally won a playoff series. The conference finals pitted the 2 best teams in the league, the Bullets versus the defending champion Celtics. And Porter continued playing great, scoring in double figures in all but 1 game and leading all players in assists. Then, after fouling out in a Game 5 loss, Porter again came through in a potential series clincher, turning in a 21-point, 11-assist Game 6. The Bullets got the win and were heading to the NBA Finals to take on the underdog Golden State Warriors. With the way he had been playing, it had many believing that Porter was Washington's key to the series. As long as he could stay out of foul trouble, they should be NBA champions. But that's easier said than done. Porter was on fire in Game 1, dropping 13 first-quarter points. Then foul trouble keeps him on the bench for most of the next 3 quarters, eventually fouling out after 28 minutes. Golden State ends up winning by 6. Porter played 43 minutes in Game 2, yet struggled. Now the Bullets were down 0-2. Then Porter had his best game, 21 points and 6 assists, with only 3 fouls. Yet Washington experienced their biggest loss of the series. Then even though Porter put up 19 and 8 in Game 4, it was in a losing effort. The Warriors had shocked the world and swept the Bullets. But Porter's breakout season had seen him average about 11.5 points, 8 assists, and 2 steals per game. For as dynamic as Porter could be, he was also young and erratic, with some saying that he lacked maturity and was intimidated by Golden State, which seemingly influenced the offseason decision made by the Bullets front office to trade Porter to Detroit for veteran guard Dave Bing. It was an interesting acquisition, as Porter's game was suited well for the fast-paced Bullets, and now he was joining a Detroit Pistons team who played at one of the slowest paces in the league. But unlike Bing, Porter was a pass-first guy. He was also much younger and a fierce competitor on both ends of the floor. Soon after arriving, Porter had a new 4-year contract, and the Pistons had a 25-year-old point guard who had just led the league in assists to pair with their superstar big man Bob Lanier. And that pairing was looking pretty good. 19 games into the season, and Porter was making last year's assist numbers look pedestrian, averaging over 10 per game, and helping the Pistons to an 11-8 start. But that's all Detroit would get. In the 4th quarter of their 19th game, Porter, who was again leading the league in assists, went down with a fractured knee and torn ligaments. He was lost for the season, finishing with averages of about 12.5 points, 10 assists, and 2 steals per game. Porter was recovered in time for the start of the 77 season, and Detroit had added ML Carr, and as the team had made it to the conference semis last year, they were hoping for even better this year. However, they had also brought in a new coach after Porter went down last season, in Herb Brown, moving on from Ray Scott, a coach who Porter had liked and felt partially responsible for his firing. And as it would turn out, Porter and Brown wouldn't really see eye to eye. Kevin Porter had built his reputation on speed, cutting, and never taking a play off. And even after a major knee injury, that couldn't change. The Pistons played as well as they did early last season for those exact reasons. But understandably, Porter was eased back into the lineup, coming off the bench for the first 12 games. Then in mid-November, he was again made a starter after third-year guard Eric Money was injured, and immediately rattled off 5 straight games with at least 13 assists, capped off with a 14-point, 20-assist performance in a win over Boston. Porter remained a starter for a while, and even after a major knee injury, he was playing well, all things considered. But there were a lot of things to be considered, mainly that the Pistons were a dysfunctional mess.
Porter has been in the eye of the storm, as it were, with his coach all year long.
Herb Brown was out to prove himself as an NBA coach, just like his brother Larry had done in the ABA. But that starts with earning the respect of your own players, something Brown could never do with his loud and critical coaching style, a far cry from the much more respected Ray Scott. Even when Brown made a good point, his players were so annoyed by him that it didn't matter, and the players he annoyed the most were his bevy of guards. Whether it was Eric Money telling Brown not to put him in the game, or Chris Ford berating Brown for yelling at him during a play, saying Herb Brown had lost the locker room would be an understatement. But the main attraction was the never-ending conflict between Brown and Porter. The problems began before the season did. Brown had 4 guards who expected to start, with Porter at the forefront. After Porter went down last year, Eric Money had stepped up and played well, so Brown kept him as the starter. But this didn't fly with Porter, as he went off on Brown, both in private and public. According to Porter, he knew the Pistons were deep at guard and had no issue coming off the bench, but he wanted to be used correctly. He knew he could contribute to winning, so if he wasn't getting minutes and the team was losing, to him, that was a sign that something needed to change. When Porter had to fill in for Money, things got better. Porter was happier, and for as dysfunctional as they were, Detroit was winning. But that happiness only lasted about 5 weeks. On Christmas Day 1976, Kevin Porter was gifted with a $1,000 fine for not sitting next to Brown on the bench. The next game, Porter was coming off the bench, removed from the starting lineup. A few days later, he was requesting a trade during a game. Then 2 weeks after that, Porter got another fine after nearly fighting his coach. The Pistons tried selling to the public that the feud was over with a press conference, but that's a hard sell when Porter doesn't even attend. Brown did seem to understand where Porter was coming from. He had a chip on his shoulder, and even more to prove after the knee injury. But nonetheless, irreparable damage had been done in less than a month. Porter didn't even want to wear a Pistons uniform anymore, yet he'd have to for the rest of the season. When Porter got his minutes, he did his usual damage, but those minutes were volatile and dipped as the season wore on, permanently removed from the starting lineup in late March. But through all of this, the Pistons had managed 8 more wins than last year and were set to take on the Warriors in round 1. Porter's role didn't really change in the first round series, still coming off the bench and still playing much less minutes than expected. He was still the best passer on the floor, as he averaged nearly 6 per game in his limited time. The Pistons would take game 1, but after losing the next 2, their loud season came to a quiet end, with Porter's eventful year seeing him average about 9 points, 7.5 assists, and a steal per game. In a surprise to many, Kevin Porter was still a Detroit Piston to begin the following season, and Herb Brown was still his coach. Over the offseason, Porter had taken some accountability for his actions and expressed that he didn't feel as though Brown should lose his job over it, but he also made it clear that he didn't want to play for him, and he wouldn't play for him much longer. 8 games into the season, Detroit found a trade partner, and Porter got a fresh start. Now a New Jersey Net, this was a situation that Porter and fans could get excited about. The Nets had been a slow, low-scoring team last year, but head coach Kevin Lockery would let Porter play his game this year. When Porter was on the court, he'd be running, and with Porter getting some of the most minutes of his career, the Nets were running a lot and scoring nearly 10 more points than the year prior. And if the Nets were scoring, there was a good chance that Porter had a hand in it.
Kevin Porter has either scored or assisted on upwards of 40% of the Nets' points since he was acquired from Detroit in November, 37%.
Porter was catching defenders off guard and slicing to the hoop for some of the highest point totals of his career. And it was the same story for his assists.
The guy at the basketball, Kevin Porter's leading the NBA in assists.
And it definitely helped that he had a rookie named Bernard King running alongside him all year. Then got another super scorer in late January in Super John Williamson. Porter spent the season putting up video game numbers. He recorded 40 double-doubles, he recorded a career-high 40 points in an early December loss to the Bucks, and when Scott Skiles dished an NBA record 30 assists, he broke the mark of 29, set by Porter on February 24, 1978, in a win over the Rockets, one of 4 games with at least 20 assists for the Nets guard, as Porter captured his second assist crown and averaged over 10 per game. Porter and the Nets were exciting, but they weren't all that good. The defense was one of the worst in the league, and ball security was a big problem. with Porter being responsible for a lot of their turnovers. But he was a hit among his teammates, a player who everyone thought made a pretty bad team a little bit better. And while New Jersey got out to a 9-42 start, the addition of Williamson helped them finish at 24-58. Still the worst in the league, but much better than the direction they were heading in. As Porter wrapped up his season with averages of about 15 points, 10 assists, and 1.5 steals per game, Porter had just turned in the best season of his career, looking to be in a good situation in New Jersey, at least one that was better than Detroit. But then 10 months after the Pistons traded him to the Nets sent him right back. It turned out Porter hadn't completely sworn off Detroit. His home was there, and he enjoyed the area, and the Nets didn't expect him to re-sign with the team, so much so that they had already been shopping Porter last year. So they sent him back to the place he probably would have returned to anyway, swapping him for his once understudy, Eric Money. And he was excited to go back to Detroit? Herb Brown was gone. In his place, Dick Vitale. Porter loved Vitale's intensity, as it reminded him of other coaches he had. Vitale wanted to play a running game. Porter was the perfect man for that. Porter and the franchise were giving each other a second chance. This is what Porter wanted the first time around. He was playing career-high minutes and had full freedom to play as fast as he wanted to. He respected Vitale and looked like a different player from his first stint. The team hadn't changed much in a year, with guys like Lanier and ML Carr still acting as top players. But now Porter was one of those top players. He played and started all 82 games. He put up the highest scoring average of his career and tied his career high for steals. But his assists are what set him apart. Porter would repeat as the league leader, this time on the highest single season mark in NBA history, with 13.4. As of 2025, only John Stockton and Isaiah Thomas have put up a higher single season average. But in 1979, no one had seen assist numbers like that. Kevin Porter became the first player in NBA history to record 1,000 assists in a season. He had at least 10 assists in 62 games, at least 20 assists in 9 games, and had the game of his life in a March 9th win over Boston, when he finished with 30 points and 25 assists. Vitale couldn't help but sing Porter's praises. He accepted Porter's somewhat erratic play and even appreciated that play on defense. Whether it was an important game or a meaningless practice, Porter always played like his life was on the line. Everything was coming together for Porter. The same couldn't be said for the Pistons. Lanier missed over a third of the year, and any win streak was followed by a losing streak of equal or greater length. It was a historic season for Porter, and a forgettable one for the Pistons. 32 wins and no playoff berth, with Porter averaging about 15.5 points, 13.5 assists, and 2 steals per game. The Porter-Pistons relationship had been rekindled, and this time sparks flew. But when it feels too good to be true, it usually is. About 10 months after the Pistons brought him back, they let him go, the two sides unable to come to a contract agreement. The money was right, but the security was not. Out of a potential 5-year deal, only 2 were guaranteed. Porter walked, but returned to another familiar place, his first NBA partnership, the Washington Bullets. The Bullets would guarantee all 5 years of $1 million deal, and Porter joined a team who still featured Elvin and Wes Unseld, and were 2 years removed from an NBA title. Porter's addition gave them one of the best point guards in the league, and a player who already had rapport with their stars. Washington was looking dangerous. But the season began, and it soon became clear that this wouldn't be another record-setting year for Porter. While he was the starter over the first 2 months of the season, his minutes had been cut significantly from last year. By mid-December, he was out of the starting lineup, benched in favor of new signing Jim Clemens, and watching his minutes plummet as the season wore on, even hearing his name in trade rumors. But the thing is, he wasn't even playing bad.
Here's Porter taking it in, and Kevin Porter doing an excellent job. He has 13 points, and you wonder why he hasn't been playing more.
His turnovers and fouls continue to be an issue, but at this point, you knew this about Porter. But his points and assists continued at the same rate as they always had. The only explanation for the dip being his lack of playing time. But Porter handled it a lot differently than he did in Detroit. He didn't approve of it, but he accepted it with maturity, happy when he did get playing time. And late in the season, Porter found his way into the starting lineup after Clemens was injured. Porter had lost the confidence of head coach Dick Motta early in the year, but now he felt like he was regaining Motta's confidence and felt more comfortable on the floor, doing what he did best, as Porter helped the team go 4-2 in their final 6 to finish with 39 wins, which was enough for a playoff berth. In a postseason that was over quickly, Porter remained the starter and put up respectable numbers, again in limited minutes. But the Sixers made quick work of the Bullets with a sweep, and Porter's year ended with averages of about 7.5 points, 6.5 assists, and a steal per game. Motta was gone going into the following season, replaced by Gene Shue, the man who had been so excited when the Bullets drafted Porter nearly a decade earlier. And Shue put Porter where he belonged, in the starting lineup, where Porter would show that he was far from finished. He got nearly 32 minutes a night, he played 81 games, and started 61 of them, and had one of the most efficient shooting seasons of his career. And his assists, while not at the level of his 79 season, were once again the highest mark in the league, his 4th career assist title. However, some of the best players he was surrounded by were in the twilight of their careers, still effective, but not at the level they once were. Washington played good defense, but in turn didn't score much. They had another 39-win season, but this year that wasn't enough for the playoffs. Porter's year ended with averages of about 13.5 points, 9 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. Porter had had a bit of a redemption year, and even at 31, he seemed to have a lot left in the tank. Age couldn't stop him just yet, but injury could. And in mid-October, Porter sustained one of the worst. During a Bullets practice, Porter tore his Achilles, sidelining him for the entire 82 season and putting his career in jeopardy. But Porter fought back and returned to the court 14 months later, making his season debut on December 21st, 1982. And over the next month, he got solid minutes, but he had been away from the game for so long and had lost the explosiveness that made him effective. The numbers weren't there, so the Bullets cut him loose after 11 games. After he had averaged about 4.5 points, 4 assists, and a steal per game. Porter briefly continued his career in the Philippines, but he was released after 8 games, marking the end of his playing days, but not the end of his basketball career, as Porter soon returned to his alma mater as a head coach, spending a few years there before pursuing another dream and becoming a physical education teacher back in Chicago. Kevin Porter led the league in assists 4 times. He's not in the Hall of Fame, he wasn't even an all-star, but that doesn't make his accomplishments any less impressive. Porter was an undersized guard coming from a small school, who carved his path in the NBA, played his game, and stuck around for a decade, rewriting the record books during that time. His best numbers came on losing teams, but he also played great for winning teams. He was out of control yet in control at the same time, and had a game that looked a lot like Magic Johnson, only in a much smaller body and 10 years earlier. The 1970s are the most forgotten decade in NBA history, and Kevin Porter is one of its most forgotten players. His numbers were incredible, but numbers only tell half the story, and Kevin Porter had quite the story. But that's it for today's episode on Kevin Porter. Hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on one of his Washington Bullets teammates, or this one on another forgotten 70s point guard. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.